You're listening to the Food Garden Life Show, the show with simple, practical, and fun ideas to help you grow food at home, whether it's on a balcony, in a backyard, or bigger. I'm your host, Stephen Biggs. Welcome to Season 9, Episode 20 of the Food Garden Life Show. Food gardens are often described in practical terms: harvests, yields, square footage, crop plans, useful things, necessary things. But in this conversation with Michael Ableman, urban farming becomes something larger. Ableman's work with Soul Food Street Farms in Vancouver shows how farming can turn underused city land into productive growing space while also creating meaningful work, community, and a sense of belonging. This episode looks at the practical realities of urban farming: finding land, choosing crops, building markets, navigating regulations, and also making the numbers work. But it also asks a bigger question: what else can a farm grow? Food, certainly, but also confidence, purpose, neighborhood connection, and hope. The one word I think that really sums that up: well-being. That's the through line for me, where growing food commercially and growing food at home truly intersect. Well-being. Whether it's an urban farm in Vancouver or a few pots on a patio, the act of growing food can change how people feel in a place and how they feel in themselves. I'm bringing this conversation back from the archive. It first aired in 2020. You'll hear my daughter Emma in there too. And if you're new to the show, this podcast was originally our shared project, which we started as Emma immersed herself and me in urban food production. Now, here's our conversation with Michael Ableman.
Welcome to the show, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, so nice to be with you.
Well, I wanted to start by asking you about Soul Food Street Farms. I was lucky enough to get my hands on a copy of your book about it. It really inspired me. I was wondering if you could start by telling our listeners what the farm is and how it got started.
Yeah, we started, I think it's about 13 years ago, with two primary goals. We operate on the downtown east side of Vancouver. I'm not sure how many of your listeners are familiar with that neighborhood. It is considered to be the lowest income community neighborhood anywhere in the country. Has highest rates of intravenous drug use, material poverty, high levels of mental illness. We started with two primary goals. One was to provide meaningful employment and training to individuals from that community in production agriculture. And the other was to actually create a credible model of urban agriculture. A lot of people are using those terms, urban agriculture. To use the word agriculture implies a skill level and a complexity that is not always present. I think a lot of my farmer friends roll their eyes when they hear the word agriculture being used to describe a front lawn or backyard. So we wanted to create a model that demonstrated that plots in the city could become economic enterprises that would employ people and produce production quantities of food for those neighborhoods. So both those were goals. We've been operating, as I said, for 13 years. We have made a lot of mistakes, which is the kind of the pathway of anyone in agriculture, is to kind of follow the 7,000-year tradition of trial and error. The book that you mentioned was an attempt not just to talk about the areas we succeeded in, but to really give a sense as to where we fell short and what we were able to learn from those mistakes.
Okay. Well, and one of the learning areas that you talk about in Farm the City is your process of finding a new type of container that was suited to your gardens. Can you tell us about that?
Farms, Dad.
Yes, farms.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. As I mentioned earlier, these are very much farms. We're producing 25 tons of food annually on just under 4 acres of pavement, large parking lots.
That's incredible.
And to do so required addressing several issues that are at the heart of any urban agriculture enterprise anywhere in the world. One is that pretty much most urban soils everywhere in the world are too contaminated to grow in, or they're paved. And the other issue is that most urban land, especially along the coastlines, is too valuable for landowners, be they developers or municipal landowners, to allow to be tied up in agriculture. So we created spent a number of years designing a box system. These are large boxes. They're made out of plastic. They isolate the growing medium from either contaminated soil or from pavement. They have forklift tabs which allow us to move them on short notice. So they address all the issues that I described. The first rendition of those boxes was they were made out of wood, and that was a fairly expensive mistake. It was cheaper, which is why we did it. But when you're talking about thousands of these boxes, and in our case it's like 8,000 of them, the loss was quite significant. So we eventually had plastic ones manufactured.
Okay. And those were custom manufactured, I believe, to your needs. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We designed these boxes. If you looked at one, you wouldn't think that there was much to it, but there's actually quite a bit of thought put into them. They are, as I said, they have forklift tabs so you can move them, which is very important. They have the ability to have interconnected drains, so drainage can be channeled and recycled. Water can be recycled. They have little holes on the top to put hoops so that plastic or row cover can be pulled over so they can act as little mini cold frames. They are stackable and nestable, and they are indestructible. And all this took a lot of thinking and planning. That's the system we currently use. We have two different types, one that we use for vegetables, which are shallower, and then we also have a large urban orchard, which is in larger boxes.
Okay. And I wanted to ask you about the orchard. Can you tell our listeners about that? That's very inspiring.
Yeah, we wonderful photographs both online and in both of the books, both the Street Farm book and the newer one, Farm to City, which show again that this is very much farm and agricultural scale. Wonderful photograph from the air drone image of the orchard. It contains about 700 or 800 trees. Each tree separated by a box of culinary herbs. We're growing culinary herbs in the understory, and then actual standard fruit trees. We did not use dwarfing rootstock intentionally. We pruned the trees to a semi-dwarf stature, but we find that we needed the vigor of a standard rootstock to balance out the fact that the root systems would have some restrictions. And it sounds exactly the opposite of what you would think.
It is, yes.
But it's worked out quite well. To be perfectly honest, when we first planted this orchard, everyone thought we were crazy and that it would never work. And to be honest, I didn't really know if it would work, but we have had great successes now in its, what is it now, maybe 8th year. The trees are, some of them over 20 feet high, 18 feet high, with large trunks.
Amazing.
And and they're producing. It takes a little bit of a different approach. There are cherries and quince and apples and pears and figs. There are persimmons, which are quite successful, which, again, no one thought would work in our climate, but have done well. We did some lemons, some Meyer lemons. So it's quite diverse.
Now, for someone who's trying to picture your farm or the orchard in their head, could you describe maybe what they'd see? Is it just a parking lot surrounded by tall skyscrapers? How would someone picture this in their head?
Yeah, I mean, some of the sites, each site is a little bit different. I mean, we have one site that has 16,000 square feet of high tunnel, unheated growing houses where we grow our melons and tomatoes and peppers and strawberries. That site is in an industrial part of Vancouver, just beneath a bridge in an area that has, different factories and taxi depots and recycling centers, quite industrial. We have one site that is our main headquarters is now primarily in a residential area, and it's beneath the Cambie Bridge, bordered by a bicycle path on one side and some housing on another side. We have another site right at the corner. The orchard is currently at the corner of Main and Terminal, although a couple of our sites are now moving. And at Main and Terminal is one of the busiest thoroughfares in Vancouver, and that's where the orchard is located. It has a low-income housing development on one end, as does our headquarters site. Now has a low-income housing development, which we have now married our project to. We have integrated the housing with the farm project, which has been quite wonderful. They're all a little bit different, surrounded by roads, tall buildings, industrial areas. It's kind of a mix.
Okay. Now, in the book, you said something that might surprise a lot of people. And when you were talking about accessing land, you said that you thought ownership was a bit overrated. Can you elaborate on that a bit, Michael?
I can. Well, first of all, I mean, from the urban perspective, especially on the scale that we're operating at Soul Food Street Farm, ownership is impossible. I think for anyone considering any urban agricultural production, unless they already own the land or have incredibly deep pockets, it is near impossible to consider buying land and expect you can service a mortgage or support that purchase through agriculture. And I think it's true to a certain extent as well for even rural or peri-urban land, for where younger farmers especially, would be trying to access land. I think that ownership is definitely an overrated model. I think that we need to be looking forward towards a model that looks more at long-term leases. When I say long-term, I'm talking about, and this is not on the urban context, but on a peri-urban and rural context, a long-term lease would look like 25 years,
Okay.
The investment that a farmer would make in a rural or peri-urban context would only pay off if he or she had that kind of long-term security. On the urban front, you need a minimum of 3 to 5 years to make it work, hello? You still there?
We're still here.
Yeah, okay. So, I think that a better consideration and a more plausible approach, especially for younger farmers, is to create partnerships with landowners, be they developers. In our case, we lease land from the city of Vancouver, or private landowners, with leases that are that demonstrate that there is an exchange that goes beyond just a financial exchange. In our case, we were able to negotiate a way that landowners in the city of Vancouver received a property tax benefit by leasing to us. We demonstrated that we would clean up the sites and leave them in better condition than when we started, that we would move on short notice with a reasonable amount of notification, that the public relations benefits of having us were quite good. And all those things are kind of written into those leases so that landowners know that they're not going to be faced with a public relations nightmare if they have to ask us to leave, So I think, it's different in every location, but I think the basic principles are the same everywhere.
Okay. Now, you have a manifesto in the book too, Michael, and in there you talk about hands-on classes and how you yourself always enjoyed that at school, the hands-on things like shop, for example. And your feeling is that those belong on par with the maths and the sciences. Can you talk about that a bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we still live in a world where people need to eat food grown by farmers. They need to wear clothing that's actually still not entirely made by machines. They live in houses that have to be constructed and repaired, plumbing that needs fixing. They use transportation that requires manufacturing and maintenance and repair, and I could go on. And all of those things require individuals with certain skill sets that are using their hands to do the things that keep a society going. Mm-hmm. We cannot all be, not all of us can be sitting in a room at a desk in front of a computer all day. There still needs to be people doing the real work of the world. And as such, I think we do a great disservice to our young people by emphasizing and putting a greater value on things like computer sciences or math or other subjects without giving equal attention and support and value, the value being really important, to real life skills such as building and growing things and making clothing and the things that I mentioned, Yeah. And so I think that, and some of us are more oriented towards those kinds of skills, our personalities. Mine was like that. I did not do well in school. I really looked forward to wood shop and metal shop and even home economics when I was a kid, And, and in fact, I was a terrible student, and it's a bit of a puzzle that I now, lecture in many of the colleges I never attended because I didn't go to college, and that I've written, 5 books but my learning comes, it came through real experience, not through books or school. It came from actually doing. And the things I write about and the things that I practice in my life are based on having done them.
Okay.
Now, you are a lot of things. As you just said, you're not only a farmer, but you speak, you write, you're a photographer.
And we saw you called a food terrorist, too.
Yeah, right. Julia Child. Yeah, that was an odd one. I don't know how that resurfaced, but it did recently. God bless her. I love Julia Child, and I got to know her at one point in my life. But she did refer to me. I gave a speech. I think it was in 1993 in San Francisco. There was 4,000 people in the audience. It was a culinary professionals conference.
Wow.
And in that speech, I talked. I brought a bag of groceries on the stage, and I pulled each one out and told the story of those foods from the field to the plate, the journey they had traveled. And it wasn't a very pretty picture from the perspective of industrial agriculture. And this was, in 1993, a real eye-opener to all these people in the audience who were food professionals. And I was talking about GMOs, and I was talking about, all of the challenges that we were facing with an industrial agricultural system that was difficult for people doing the work and the land, and not healthy for the people eating the food. And I got done. I got a standing ovation. But the lunchtime speaker that day after me was Julia Child, and she was really upset with me because Julia, her belief was nothing, absolutely nothing, should interrupt what she called the pleasure of the table. Not the 10-year-old kids with backpack sprayers that were heavier than they were, spraying crops in Guatemala that would end up on northern tables. Nothing. She didn't want to know about that, and so she was referred to me as a food terrorist, and I took that as I took it as a compliment. I felt that was, and I have great respect for her and what she did to bring French culinary traditions to North America. That she was a very important force. But she didn't keep up with the times, and the times were changing in the way we were thinking about how those ingredients that she was cooking were coming to us. And my job was to ring the bell and blow the horn on, and ask chefs to be more responsible about how they source their ingredients.
Well, along with Soul Food Street Farms, Michael, you also have Foxglove Farm, which is on Salt Spring Island.
That's our family farm. It's 120 acres, and we grow a range of things, grains and fruits and vegetables and a little bit of livestock. And that's a whole other aspect of who I am, and that's a full-time job in and of itself. So, yeah, we're in the peak of trying to get that farm season for Foxglove Farm launched at the moment. Under some fairly significant challenges this year.
Yes.
Well, Michael, usually on the show we have a tomato segment, but since we're not having one today, could I ask you if you have a favorite tomato variety or favorite type of tomato?
Oh, I'm so glad that you're not going to drop the tomato conversation for me. Well, first of all, I grow tomatoes very differently than probably most of your listeners. I farmed in California for many years before I came to BC, which was a little over 20 years ago. And in California, I dry farmed tomatoes. I grew them without any water, which addresses two things. It addresses the fact that California is essentially a arid climate. And so we needed to learn to do things in a way that were address the fact that there was very little water, and the water that was there was very expensive. And two, that by dry farming tomatoes, you grew much higher quality tomatoes, And so I would plant my tomatoes in the spring very deeply, sometimes a foot, sometimes a foot and a half deep in the ground,
Wow.
sometimes deeper. And then they would survive on only the moisture they would gain throughout the year. And you could come see those tomatoes in that following September, and they looked beautiful, lush, and productive, and without ever having received a drop of water. I still grow tomatoes with that approach, not as extreme as I did down there, but some of my favorites are, it's interesting. We have a favorite which is called green zebra, which I'm sure you're familiar with, quite common.
That's a good one,
now.
yeah.
And but one even still at the market, it's 2020, and I still have to, surprises me, explain to customers at the farmers market that this is in fact a ripe tomato, and it's probably one of the more delicious tomatoes on the display. But most people will still ignore them unless I cut them open and let them try them.
Yeah.
I grow some. I still grow some heirloom varieties. We really like striped German. It's a terrible variety as a commercial variety, but it's a real conversation piece at the market. It's entirely too big to sell to anyone, but they're gorgeous. They're delicious. You cut open a striped German, and it's like looking at a sunburst in the center of it.
Yeah, they're beautiful tomatoes.
Yeah, I have some other ones. One of my favorite currently is one called Berkeley tie-dye. Do you know that one?
Yes, I've grown it. It's another great one.
Excellent. That's a wonderful tomato. So, but the truth is that the same varieties are a completely and totally different experience depending on how they're grown. And in our experience, most people, by watering their tomatoes, are doing a great disservice to the quality of that fruit. And you, by holding the water back, you essentially raise the flavor and sugars of that fruit and create a much higher quality experience.
Okay. Well, following in Emma's footsteps, we also have a fig segment on the show normally. And
did you say figs, F-I-G?
F-I-G.
Wow.
And
awesome.
So I'd be interested to hear about growing figs at Soul Food, but also at Foxglove Farm.
We grow figs in both locations. Very successful with it in Vancouver, in the city. Those trees are huge and doing quite well. As long as we can get the netting on, because when you're growing on a scale like we do in the city, every bird for miles around are going to find you, because there are not many orchards with producing fruit in the middle of the city. So they have to be netted quite thoroughly. And if we do, we get a wonderful crop. We grow primarily an Adriatic type called Desert King. We're lucky because it's one of the varieties that does the best in this climate.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is one of the best eating varieties, in my view, that there is. Deep strawberry red flesh, pale yellow outer skin, exceptional quality fruit. And we get one crop. Although I have experimented for years with a number of techniques to try to ripen a second crop, it rarely happens. It has happened a bit, and there are some wonderful techniques, painting the calyx end of the fruit with a little bit of, with your finger, just a little bit of olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
To heat it up. There are lots of ways but we only focus on the one crop. The second crop does not actually ripen very well. Foxglove Farm is a lot cooler. It's a higher elevation.
Yeah.
We don't have all that heat sink from the pavement around us. So the cropping is not as prolific, and it the fruit tends to come off later. Okay.
Well, Michael, we're getting to towards the end of our time, and just a big thank you for coming on the show to tell us all about Farm the City and tell us about what you do. It's very inspiring.
I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope people will check out the book, the latest book, Farm the City, and the earlier one, Street Farm. I think those will give a much deeper look at what we're up to, and I appreciate you talking with me today, both of you.
Thank you so much, Michael. It was fantastic talking with you.
All the best.
Thank you. Bye.
You're listening to the Food Garden Life Show. I'm Stephen Biggs.